What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Collision Live. Daniel here, as always, joined at the desk by the Ben to my Jerry's, Mr. Samuel David Kemp.
I do love ice cream, Daniel.
And do you know that they actually have Ben and Jerry's ice cream for dogs?
I'm not surprised because dogs are the new kids.
Yeah, why not? If you have a spoiled dog in your life, give him some Ben and Jerry's. But what's up? This has been a crazy week.
It's been one week for the books for sure.
You have a whole new stock of bacon on the way, I believe.
Yes, we took our two little piggies to the butchery yesterday, so should have some fresh forest raised bacon coming in.
Yeah, and there's this thing heartless about calling them piggies in that context, but I'll leave that between you and God. But we're excited to Collision Live every week, just kind of discuss different cultural issues, things going on. Kind of what it means for the church, for Christians. How can we engage, be present in the culture that we're in? Just looking at different topics, different news stories, and just kind of digging right into it. Encourage you guys, if you guys are watching us live, join the comment section. Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah.
We'd love to just have a discussion with you guys as we were working through this stuff ourselves. But the first part of our live stream is what we call pop culture news. So there wasn't a ton of crazy news stories in pop culture that stood out to me, but a couple of things that I thought were just kind of, this is the extra quirky edition of pop culture news. One I saw, and I'll admit from the start, I didn't do a deep dive research into all the implications of this, but I saw China has banned, and I don't know if that's just like countrywide thing or what the scope of that is, but has banned kids under 18 from online video games during the week, and limiting them to about 3 hours on the weekend. Obviously, there's a lot of political stuff in there that we don't need to get into, but just sort of a crazy trying to, in maybe a overreach of a way to control just the rampant, addictive quality. I know we've gotten into that before.
Yeah.
This online video games, and how do you kind of control that? That's one way to do it. So we'll see kind of what comes from that. Speaking of video games, I don't know if you saw that Martin Luther King was added to Fortnite. Doesn't seem like it almost seems like these kind of pull out of a hat video game and some cultural figure. The two don't necessarily seem to go together. It was just I didn't play it, kind of a special mode where there wasn't like guns and normal Fortnite stuff. It was just sort of like a tour through kind of his walk and kind of celebrating his legacy. It's a weird.
That's an
mashup.
Odd one. Yeah,
but
I wouldn't have expected that.
We had political campaigning in Animal Crossing. It's sort of video games have become a bit of a new frontier for wider cultural, political, social issues.
Yeah.
So that one was crazy. This one stood with me as a guitar player myself. I don't know if you saw this too. Fender Guitars, the company, they crunched some numbers. I don't know how they could figure it out, and kind of released that their estimates are that 1 in 3 guitars that they've sold as a company has gone to people in worship bands or praise teams.
I've certainly contributed to that statistic.
Yes, we are one of those 1 in 3
as former P&Ws.
but it's kind of crazy. Again, I have no idea how you can actually figure out that kind of number.
Yeah.
But we've talked about that before, as far as why are so many singing competition contestants Christian? This is sort of goes to show too, is how deep the nowhere else in the country do you have that kind of regular just music, have opportunity to sing, to play, whether it's playing a Fender guitar or singing. It's definitely just a huge pool of talent that the church has. Here's the last thing, and I throw this sort of as a call for help, as I might need help to convince my wife that this is a valid use of our budget and time. The Middle Earth Ultimate 31-disc Collector's Edition was just announced.
4K Blu-ray.
You get 4K of all 6 movies. You get remastered Blu-rays, you get digital, you get books, you get posters, you get all. This is like Christmas Day for a Tolkien fan. Do I own all these movies already? Yes, I do, in multiple formats, maybe. But I don't own them in 4K, and I don't own them in this nice-looking package. So this thing will cost you, as of now, a nice tidy about $250. So I might need some help.
It's an investment, right?
Yeah. So pray for me as I begin
generation.
to make the sales pitch. That this is Tolkien was a Christian. This is a very edifying spiritual experience for me. I feel is God's will. But again,
good luck with that.
But I am super excited for this. I have not seen these in 4K. I recently saw Star Wars in 4K for the first time. And it's sort of like my awakening of like, wow, like 4K actually.
Yeah,
it
looks
really better than not 4K. So I'm ready for.
Well, Christmas is just around the corner, so you never know.
That is true. If my wife won't come through, then maybe old Santa Claus,
old Saint Nick, will do the trick.
Well, so that's all that we have for pop culture news. Nothing super crazy, just more ways for me to spend my money. But as far as sort of the first topic, I was thinking of this sort of cultural things and icons and beloved franchises and all that. This is kind of a general conversation, I guess, that I thought we could get into. And it's sort of the whole issue of, do Christians need to be, quote unquote, culturally relevant? And this is sort of inspired. I think maybe actually Manda, who's running our cameras, might have sent this video to my wife. Some weird TikTok thing. I'm not a TikToker, but it's some pastor that's like doing some sermon illustration based on Among Us, the popular game, and it's like Christ came among us, and he has like the characters in the back, and it's the cheesiest thing you've ever seen, but sort of using pop culture to try and kind of relate, and you see that all the time. I was part of a church plant, a great church plant that did a lot of great stuff, but when Lost was in its heyday, it was like Lost with Jesus, and had like all the logos, and like just trying to kind of capitalize on to make the church relevant. Like what does that actually kind of mean? Do Christians need to be culturally relevant? Is that even the best way to think about that? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think the church can be and should be culturally relevant, because if you take sort of the 30,000-foot view, like the gospel is always culturally relevant. Like it's been relevant for the past like 2,000 years, and so in every culture it's relevant. And I think maybe what we sort of cringe about is when we maybe lessen or sort of, I don't know, cheapen the gospel and sort of what we're trying to say by kind of padding it with whatever the trendy thing is. And so I would say Christianity doesn't need to be trendy. And I think maybe that's the sort of that tension is like, I think mistake Christian being culturally relevant as a Christian with being like culturally trendy.
Because that is and before we get into it, I should call out the trolls we have in our comment section. Monty says, no one needs Hobbit in 4K. Of course, I will acknowledge the Hobbit movies are not as good as the Lord of the Rings movies or as good as the book, but more Tolkien in 4K, so we will have our mods kick Monty out of the chat. Yeah. Just kidding. But I think trendy is a good, because I was thinking one of the first, when I kind of got into the whole topic and like idea of cultural engagement and Christians and kind of thinking deeper about that, I found a book. It was called I think it's called The Culturally Savvy Christian. I meant to bring it down, and like on the cover is just like from like the neck down is this guy and his like sleeve tattoos, and he has like bedazzled belt, and he's like the coolest guy. You just know it's if the cover went further down, he'd have skinny jeans on and spiked hair and probably sunglasses inside the church
and a keychain or a wallet chain.
Yeah, he was one of those one in three that had a Fender guitar, and like and the book was fine. It got me
two Fender guitars.
It got me interested in it. But I think that's sort of when people think of like culturally relevant, it's sort of like cool. Like Christians need to be
hip.
Like, cool and hip, and like we need to be able to like can you even share the gospel if you can't quote Breaking Bad episodes, like kind of this idea that like we have to like put this package on Christianity to make it like cool, so that the world and like unbelievers and skeptics will like think, I guess Christians are.
They'll drop their lattes and say, it all makes sense.
Yeah, I thought they were these religious stuffy people, but but they actually know office quotes.
But now that they grafted the smoke monster onto
tell
their
me more
sermon.
about your Jesus, and I think that is and that's kind of why. when I've talked about got into these issues, like I prefer like to use the word like culturally engaged. Like I think even like in our little buffer video thing that we have for the live stream, like the word engaged is there, and but I think that's sort of more aware of what's going on, the conversations, aware of like what's in like what's being talked and pushed through media and entertainment, kind of engaged with it beyond just like, I'm a Christian and I rock at Trivial Pursuit, therefore listen to my gospel kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and you've talked about this before, just how Paul sort of takes what's happening in the culture and applies like the gospel to it, but he's aware enough to know like this is going to land with your audience. And so much of it, I think, is just like knowing your audience. And so if you are speaking or preaching or whatever, half of public speaking is, I think, probably knowing your audience. And so I think a lot of times it's just a matter of not so much trying to be culturally relevant, but just having enough awareness about where we are in the culture to apply whatever truth it is to that moment in a way that makes sense, and then it doesn't sort of latch on to something that maybe is a hot button issue that maybe you miss because you haven't really read into. Like I think the whole like Satan Shoes episode highlighted this really well. Is like you got Lil Nas X like just trolling basically all of conservative dumb. And they're all just kind of missing the point of what he's doing. And so I think you can try and like latch onto something in a wrong way, and it just falls flat because you're trying to like just be culturally relevant. And again, it goes back to what you said, like you're just trying to be hip, and the only people that aren't hip are the people who are using the term hip.
Yeah, and as anyone that like grew up, which is all of us, with like a parent or older people, like older adults in your life, like nothing is less hip than like someone that's using things that they clearly don't understand, and they're just trying to like throw out Marvel references or. But I think you're kind of just the awareness thing for me, because I think you said at the start of our conversation, like the gospel is always relevant. Like the gospel and cultures have changed, situations, politics have changed, everything's changed. Different countries are very different cultures, but like the gospel always has something to say, that's truth and can speak into it. So I think kind of the cultural engagement, cultural relevancy for Christians is less like trying to show that we're cool, but like more just being aware of like, hey, what are people talking about? Like what is actually, the conversations, and like how can we communicate the gospel in a way that speaks to that issue?
Yeah.
Not like, media is talking about this, but I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because you're not tuned into these.
Well, and I think maybe we talked about this some last week, but I think you sort of cheapen and lessen the impact of the gospel and of Christianity when you try and like slap some trendy face on it and say, oh, well, look, it's, it relates so well to Among Us or whatever the hot topic is at the time. And I think, you're just sort of like peddling, it comes across as you're just kind of peddling this information or these truths in whatever way is trendy at the time. And I think when you do that, it obviously looks like, well, what you're saying isn't really all that powerful or important because you're just trying to like put it on all these relevant faces to try and convince us to come to your church or whatever it is. And I think people can see through that. And I think it makes the truth that you do have to say less relevant and less powerful, because it's like, well, I mean, you're just kind of trying to slap that on anything. And so it's like,
yeah, this is total reactionary of like,
right,
what's popular now? How does it? Again, it doesn't mean you can't. We do that all the time at the collision. I do that. Like, I compared like the gospel and like the message of the church like to Jaws in an article. Like, it doesn't mean you can't see gospel truth like in entertainment and stuff. It's just sort of the pressure that Christians don't need to be cool. They need to be engaged and aware. And kind of ready to communicate and have those discussions.
Yeah, and I think what it says when you're always trying to fish for these, relevant sticking points, if you will, then I think it just reveals that you don't believe that the gospel does have the power that you say it has. And I think I think that's what gets communicated, is that like it's not strong enough to stand on its own. It needs to have these cultural crutches to sort of prop it up so that it can, get through and speak to people where they are today.
Yeah, you're trying to make it more attractive and marketable. Let us know what you guys think. How do you kind of balance that? Do you feel pressure to be caught up to date with all pop culture and stuff, or what does it mean for Christians to be engaged in sort of what's going on in our culture? We'd love to have that conversation with you. Next part, making its return after last week's debut voyage, we have Host Corner. So I kicked us off last week sharing from my heart deep thoughts about Lord of the Rings, as I want to do. So this week, give me a break. Pass it over to Sam.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're going to talk about. Something I got to pretend to be interested in. But if we have our time, or before we get our timer, what is your topic? What are you?
Well, it's a particular presenter over across the way in England, Monty Don.
Never heard of him, but kick off the timer and let Sam do his thing.
So in case you're wondering, yes, I did make that video intro. You can DM me for details on how to make that magic happen. So we live in an age that's very troubled. There's lots of turmoil across the world, and many people will turn to drugs and alcohol or other substances to make themselves feel better. But I have a better elixir for you, and that is the world-renowned British broadcast host and horticulturalist Monty Don. And if you don't know who Monty Don is, first of all, you should Google him. But he's a horticulturalist and a gardener, best known for his series on the BBC called Gardener's World. And it is amazing. And if you ever just need time to just chill out and relax and just feel warm and fuzzy inside, you should watch Gardener's World.
So we'll let our little bell go. So for those of us that don't live on a farm and have animals, what is a horticulturalist?
It's someone who studies like plants, essentially. So he doesn't do necessarily like farm animals. It's all vegetables and flowers and bushes and trees and everything. Yeah,
that is very on brand for Sam to talk about a horticulturist. If you are like Sam, one of the few that would find interest in that, check that out. I won't pretend that I will be doing that this week, but all power to Sam. So I'll be back next week. May or may not be talking about some Norwegian power metal operas.
I am shocked.
So speaking of on brand, so the next thing, kind of the next topic we wanted to jump into, kind of piggybacking off of last week. I think I showed my lack of cultural relevance to you, and I called him Denis Villeneuve. I think it's Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah.
So I got the complicated
French-Canadian
name wrong. Missed the easier softball one. But we talked last week when we were getting into some of his issues. How he was not happy about the theater, and they compared it to like theaters like the church experience, and so we got into a portion of kind of the religious element of cinema.
Yeah.
So we don't get into that, but I did think it was an interesting analogy that he had used as far as going to see his movie at your home is like trying to ride a motorboat through. In your bathtub. It's just overpowered. It's not meant for that. My brother and I actually we were just texting back and forth yesterday. He finally saw Tenet for the first time and wasn't super into it. And he saw it at I think probably on his a laptop. And we went and saw. We did a review for that. And we saw it in the biggest screen that they have and anywhere near us. And just sort of wondering we weren't, at least I wasn't super crazy about the movie either, but just the difference of that. I'm sure seeing it where at the opening scene, my ears are still ringing months and months later from the theaters, and this is the experience of it. Where I don't know if seeing it on a small screen would have the same.
Because I've gone back and that one is one I've rewatched just because it is so confusing.
Is it better on the second viewing, or do you still have no idea what's going on?
I think it is better. Obviously, I knew a little bit. I could catch a few things more than I did the first time, but there's still lots that I still didn't catch on to. But the viewing experience is very different, I will say.
Yeah. So that cause in some ways, this is more of like a, you think maybe more like a Hollywood inside issue where they're debating new mediums and like, what does that matter for Christians? Do we have any skin in the game, or we just let them figure out their thing and just kind of go with it? But I do think, it is relevant to us. It is important to, it's a big, one of the biggest entertainment storytelling mediums we have as a culture.
Yeah.
And as that changes, the kind of the framework to that, and changes the experience, like that does have kind of ripple effects. So what do you think? Like this whole conversation between, kind of movie, seeing it traditional in the movie theater and sort of the shift now to like same day releases and you don't need to go to the theater. You just watch it on HBO Max or watch it on Netflix or whatever it is. Like what's your takeaway from this?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting. I think certain things are perfectly fine to be viewed at home. And I think there are certain movies that like if you really want to experience it the way it was intended, you need to go to a theater or have like a home theater system, which obviously,
or have the 4K 31 disc deluxe ultimate set.
You could do that too and just not watch anything else ever again, and then your life would probably be fulfilled. But I think there is something that's lost when you're viewing at home. Like I said, I watched Tenet in theater and on my laptop, and it's definitely way better in theater, and you're just so much more immersed, and you're seeing it as it was intended to be seen. That doesn't mean that like you can't enjoy something at home, and I do think there is, again, it's sort of another segmenting of society, if you will. I think maybe on a broader level, it's another thing that we're not doing as a like together, if that makes sense. And so it's another way for us to just be more siloed off into our own little worlds and in our own little echo chambers. And so if we only have ourselves to decide, well, that was funny or that was scary, and there's no communal experience in what's happening. And so I think on a broader scale, I don't think that's good. I think the convenience of being able to see stuff at home I think that's kind of cool. But
like we're both, because the argument you kind of get, pro home viewing is like family, and we're both parents.
Yeah.
It is easier to like, do I want to pack up my two kids and go and spend $600 on a small stale popcorn and like, watch this movie as my kids are moving around, like, or do we just want to like sit in front of the TV and like, in theory, you think you sit there and we're all watching, but
that never happens.
I'm on my phone, and the kids are, one of them's doing somersaults, and
so I think that's part of the thing that's lost, and would be you're not going specifically to go see this thing, and so you're not going to be as engaged with it as you otherwise would be if you'd paid for it and gone to a theater. And so at home, as much as you would want to, like, chances are you're going to pull out your phone and be somewhat distracted in your viewing experience, and that's going to take away from the experience of the movie, whereas in the theater you're not going to do that, or at least you shouldn't be. And if you're one of those people that do that, shame on you.
Yeah, you need to come to Jesus and repent.
Yeah.
But I have nothing to go. This is just my own thoughts, and you can maybe help me process it. But like in some ways, I feel like a theater is like an experience. Like you're going where like watching something at home, like on your own TV, is almost more kind of, even if it's a great film, like it becomes more just diverting entertainment. Like and like that's not true across the board. And like there can be some dramas that maybe play better at home and all that kind of discussion. But you do lose something when you're not kind of immersed and like really you can't be on your phone. Like you're just sort of the story and like kind of be informed by the story and kind of the emotions it sparks, as opposed to kind of giving not your full attention, and like you're not immersed because it's you're looking past your cluttery living room as you're watching, and like it becomes more of like a just, okay, I'm tired, I got here's a 2.5 hour movie, I'll put it on, just sort of kind of watch it while I'm checking my fantasy sports team. Like I don't know if it becomes more just baseline, like you're just killing time.
I do think that is a danger, and again I think there's certain films and obviously TV shows that are meant to be viewed at home, and I think that's fine. But I do think there are films that are meant to be viewed in a theater, and I think for those ones, I think it's better to view it in a theater. And I think the other thing about theaters, and I think most people aren't going to the movies every weekend, and so they're going to be selective about the movies that they see. And I think that's one benefit of seeing things in theaters. Growing up, like, at least for me, I couldn't afford to go to the movie theater like every weekend, but like there were certain movies that, like, yeah, we're going to definitely like get all your friends together. We're going to go see this. It's going to be great. And so again, it becomes more of that experience, and you're more selective in the type of movies that you want to go see.
And there is and obviously just in some way, like all movies end up, like movies don't stay in the theaters.
Right.
Like, all movies become a home. Like they keep trying to put Lord of the Rings back in theaters, and they put the theatrical editions, not the extended true editions, unless you get the 4K 31 disc deluxe set.
Yeah.
But I think another, just for Christians too, like there is kind of a positive to the at home side though, is like just an increased level of control. Like I think like I started to do especially like because I'm doing reviews for The Collision, I tend to see movies that I wouldn't necessarily I'm not like counting to have a paper chain to go see Cruella or some of these movies. Like it's just, I'll see it because I can. And I know like Suicide Squad, like I got 20 minutes into that. I was like, this is just such a vulgar, gross movie. Like I can't handle this. I just turned it off and like didn't watch it. But I was watching it at home on HBO Max. Like, I was glad I didn't like drive to the theater and I'm in the middle of the theater and all of a sudden it's like, profanity and nudity and violence and like,
not to mention the 30 minutes of commercials.
Yeah, the 35 minutes, which would probably be more interesting than the movie was. But I do think that is a benefit. Like there is, there are movies that maybe just have some content and some stuff in it. Some of the bad stuff, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, that like it's like, hey, I don't want to be immersed in that. But it is a story I think is a good story and I could learn from. Like I think being able to have more freedom to kind of see it, because obviously you could do that like months later when it comes out, but like to be able to kind of be in on the conversations and stuff in the moment with the ability to like, hey, you have accountability, you have your wife or your girlfriend or your best friend or whatever, your brother, and like you can skip through scenes and like, so that is
and you just have the flexibility of your time. Like if you've got kids, it's like, well, you can put them down and then you can watch the movie at home, and so you're not having to like get a babysitter to go see a movie, especially if it's a movie you're not crazy about.
Yeah, so I do think in a way, obviously it depends on whether you have the finances or the desire to sign up for all like 35 different streaming services and stuff. But it does, I think it will allow Christians maybe to be more involved. Not that not that Christians just need to watch more, to be culturally relevant, just watch all the movies and stuff and always know what's out there. But I don't know. I don't necessarily. I'm not as pro theater as some people are. Although I do acknowledge like it's a completely different. Like I saw Jaws. I've seen Jaws on my home video probably 60 times. Like I watched that movie multiple times a year. And when the pandemic kind of shut down theaters, there are no new movie theaters. Like they put it in theaters. So of course, I risked illness. I went to the theater with my mask on and all that. And I was the only person in the entire theater. I sat right in the middle, put my feet up, and I saw it in theater, a big screen for the first time. And I can't compare seeing the shark eating people on a big screen. So it is. You'll never kind of get that.
Yeah, and I think it has its place, but I do think there are benefits to sort of the same day release and the home viewing. So I certainly wouldn't be a purist. It's like, well, no movies can go straight to video, but like movies have always been going straight to video, and it's like there's certain ones that's fine with, and then there's other ones that you can still enjoy it at home, but you do miss something by not seeing it in theaters. And so, but I think again, like there's costs and benefits both ways. So
I think the bottom line is that I need to get that 31 disc Middle Earth edition.
Yeah,
but let us know your thoughts.
How
are you? Again, it might seem more like, who cares? Is this industry stuff? Is this movies or movies? But I do think like stories impact us. They impact our culture, and like the media and the way we encounter them, kind of consume them. I don't know if that's the best word for it, but that matters too. I think as Christians, even if you're not super movie junkie, it's at least something to be aware of, kind of, as the industry is changing and the way we're kind of consuming our stories and all that. So let us know your thoughts on that. As far as this week at The Collision, just released a new article yesterday, kind of looking at the kind of the ex-evangelical movement, Josh Harris, a lot of these kind of Christians, kind of former Christian kind of spokespeople, authors, Christian celebrities, I guess, that have kind of moved away from the faith and then kind of become these like secular humanistic prophets for kind of leading people away. And I was just sort of inspired by one of them. So some of the terminology that he was using, like what as Christians, what do we do with these people that used to be proponents front and center for the gospel, and now they're kind of out there preaching a very kind of secular gospel. So I look at that. I think the article's called "Why Ex-Evangelicals Can't Kiss God Goodbye." It's actually this is our most read article in a single day ever today, and it's only noon, so it's getting a lot of traction. Could you guys check it out, and just love to have a conversation about that article with you guys. But anything else going on this week?
It's a great article. You should definitely I'll second that. You should check it out, and don't forget to Google Monty Don and watch some Gardener's World. You won't regret it. Even you, Daniel. I think you'll find it's soothing and the balm to your aching self.
I've had that person-sized hole in my heart for a long time without knowing it, so I will definitely not be doing that. But
you're welcome.
Thanks for joining us, Collision Live. Always fun. Never really know what we're going to be talking about, what's going to be going on. Shout out to Joni, Amanda, behind the scenes, making all of it happen. And thanks again for watching. If you guys are watching live, or if you guys are checking this video out later, let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Let's have a conversation about this. If you haven't done so, make sure you like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, wherever you're watching us, and just join the collision, what we're doing here. But stay safe out there, guys, and continue to collide with your world for Christ.